Are you booking consistent interviews, but you're just not able to convert those interviews into offers? It's a really tough place to be in when you're getting those initial recruiter outreaches. Maybe you're getting those AI interviews, but you're just not seeing them translate into those second, third, final round interviews. Or maybe you have cracked that and you're getting to those later stages. However, they're just not converting into offers. It is so hyper competitive out there, but that doesn't negate the fact that it is painful and it hurts and it's hard and demoralizing to be in the job search and, God forbid, being unemployed and without a paycheck and trying to figure out how to get to that point where you get that offer. It's a really tough place to be in. I know I've been there myself. Back in 2023, I was working a single product management job for a big healthcare company earning $80K. And I decided I wanted to really grow my remote income. And I figured out how to get a lot of interviews. I was booking 20, 30 interviews a month, but it was just really, really hard for me to get to that final stage in that offer round. Ultimately, I was able to land a role at double my salary. So I went from 80K to 160K. This is a whole other topic, but I pursued job stacking. So I worked both at the same time. And then I got a third offer at 150K, worked all three and made 390K. So almost 5x my total income. This video doesn't require you to be into job stacking, but I wanted to share that power of everything I'm going to walk you through today in terms of how to really get to that point where you're locking in those offers. Now, it's not just myself. I've run the job searches of over 500 people over the last 2.5 years from Meta, Netflix, Airbnb, Google, ESPN, Accenture, and more. Now, let's jump in and break it down. Now, the first thing we need to assess is, are you getting stuck in those early stages or later stages? If it's the beginning, you're getting those recruiter calls, but they're just not converting at least 70, 80% to second round interviews, you have an elevator pitch type problem. This is where you're not able to cohesively and concisely explain your value to someone who may or may not even be part of that company, may or may not even really understand the work you do, but it's their job to determine if you're a good fit or not for the role. Now, that requires a certain set of skills and repetition and practice, but it's different from what you would need to improve upon if you're getting to those later stages, the second, third, final round interviews, and just not getting offers. That is more about the depth, the value, the impact, the technical components of your jobs. We're going to get to that, and we're going to break down the top 9 reasons you're not converting those interviews into offers. Let's do it. The first reason that you are not converting interviews to offers is that there's a clear gap that you cannot see, an invisible gap. The reality is that if you were doing amazing and your answers were super good and everyone loved what you were saying, you would have an offer. So this is really the foundational point that everything else is a subset of, which is there's some sort of gap. Something is falling off a cliff and you can't see it clearly, or you can't see it clearly and you just don't know how to work on it. We're going to cover that as well. But the reality is you need to acknowledge I have a gap and I need to figure out how to fill that gap. So the best way to do that is work with someone who can do either mock interviews with you and give you tactical feedback, or record your interviews and figure out how you can get feedback on that. But again, we have personal blind spots and biases, so it's really valuable and beneficial to have someone else work with you, ideally on a repetitive basis, so that you can iteratively improve and not take 4 or 5 months of live interviews to actually gradually get better at them. You want to get all those reps in offline so that when you show up to your first couple interviews, you start crushing them and you get that job on a way more compressed timeline. Number 2 is you don't have enough repetition. So this builds on number 1. You have to have clearly identified what your gaps are, and those gaps will vary, again, whether you're in those first few rounds of interviews with the recruiter, the person who doesn't even really understand your work, or it's those later rounds. Once you've identified where your gaps are, you need to iterate and iterate and iterate. There's a book called The Art of Learning. It's a fantastic book. It's influenced my life deeply by this guy, Josh Waitzkin, who I believe he's been a world-class, best in the world champion at some sort of martial arts, I forget which kind, surfing and chess. So he has gotten amazing at becoming a true world expert at a bunch of different things. Number 1 focus when he's teaching people how to learn things and grow really quickly is repetition. How fast and how many repetitions can you get in a day, in a week, in a month? And the more repetitions you can get, the faster you will acquire. You can acquire a new skill and become an expert at something to the degree you can get enough reps in. So once you identify those gaps, you have to have a system so that you can refine those gaps. Again, this is where doing live mock interviews with trained coach, someone who actually is a true expert, not just a friend, not just a peer, not someone who just works at a company who doesn't really understand this stuff at an expert level, can give you that feedback. In addition to that, it's great to use powerful AI tools. Most of the AI tools out there are not very effective. You could type your responses into ChatGPT, but it's missing so much context, it's missing tonality. So there are a few specific AI tools we recommend for our clients to use in conjunction with live mock interviews to, again, iterative feedback, taking your live interviews that you're doing, recording those with your phone, and then piping it through those AI tools to get real-time feedback on every interview you do so you can fill those gaps that we talked about in step 1 so much faster on a daily basis. 3 is you don't understand your audience. Whether you're speaking to a recruiter, the data manager, the head of product, the CEO, the sales manager, all those people are going to care about something different. So if you're not converting interviews to offers, there's a good chance sense that you aren't doing a good enough job of stepping into the shoes of the person you're talking to, because you can't explain your work to the CEO the same way you do the recruiter who's not even part of their company. They're like a third party person who doesn't even really understand the job. They're just trying to get a paycheck, and they need to be spoken to in such a different way. So that's a huge reason why people don't progress forward. It's not that they're not capable. They just don't understand how to break down their experience for the person they're talking to in real time. 4 is the lack of impact. If I'm going to pay you $150,000 per year, I want to know you're going to give me $600,000 worth of value. So if all you're talking about is the tasks you've done, that doesn't convey impact. The way you convey impact is through dollar value quantification and figuring out how to take those core stories that you have and convert that to true real business impact. 5 is a lack of technical depth in your storytelling. And this is for the later stages when you're speaking to those directors, the VPs, the people who you would work with on a day-to-day basis. If you're not getting past those interviews, it's likely that there are also some gaps in how you're converting the skills that you need to have for that job into stories. And obviously, hypothetically, you could get asked 100 different questions, and it's not realistic to have answers for all of them. So what you need to do is have a strategy and a process and a system to help you have core stories that you can pull from and adapt for any situation. That's what we do for our clients, and it makes them way more adaptable and less brittle to a curveball question because they just really thoroughly understand how to map their past experience to any new questions they're going to have to field. 6 is figuring out that perfect balance between being long-winded and over-explaining and lulling the person to sleep where they just check out, and being too brief and not conveying enough value. You really have to find that middle ground, which again happens through getting feedback on your interviews to figure out, am I hitting that middle ground of giving enough value without being over-explanatory and making people just check out from the conversation. 7 is not connecting emotionally. You can do everything else right, but if people don't feel chemistry and a sense of excitement about the conversation they had with you, they're probably not going to pick you. I do a lot of hiring, and I do a lot of it based off vibe, which is I'm going to talk to this person daily. Do I have a good feeling when I talk to them, or do they make me feel like drained, like Eeyore, like mopey? And figuring out how to convey high energy, not too high, where it's like this person's like weirdly too excited, but also not too low is really important. And that's just like the energetics of how confident do you feel, how relaxed do you feel, how well do you feel prepared for the interview process itself. All that plays into how people are going to perceive you energetically. And as we know, only 5% of communication is verbal, 95% is nonverbal, and the energy you exude is a huge percentage of that. Number 8 is not having that X factor that makes the hiring person go, wow. I recently hired a coach for our community, for our clients. And when I was interviewing candidates, I hired the wow factor woman. In this case, what did she do well? She was just so prepared with the research and questions and an excitement about working with us that you just can't fake. That was like, wow, she may or may not be the most qualified person on paper, but she is so freaking excited about what we do that I know any gaps that she has, which there really weren't gaps. She was just as qualified as everyone else. I felt confident she would be the best performer because she communicated that she was so excited for the opportunity and took the steps to show me she was so prepared for the interview by asking me way better questions than all the other candidates. So it's figuring out what is your X factor, what's your wow factor that will set you apart from everybody else. And last, number 9 is volume of applications going out. Again, there are 500 people that apply to every job out there. So if you're getting consistent interviews, that's kind of a miracle, something that can be controlled and predicted. However, when I was going from my second to my third job, it took me 9 or 10 final round interviews to get that last offer. And it's not that I wasn't qualified, but it's that there are so many people to choose from that they're going to pick the absolute perfect person. You could have presented yourself so amazing, but there's probably one person out there that worked for a direct competitor and understands the sub industry and sub niche so well that they just have to pick that other person. So the best way to negate this is to just increase your total number of applications going out, which creates more interview volume, which creates more momentum. And then you churn through those things faster and faster. You can get an offer within a few interviews, but we also want to hedge against that. And the best way to do that, again, is just create as much interview volume as you possibly can, knowing that it's a numbers game. So if you want support with this process, we can run your job search for you, just like we have for 500 other professionals. Get assigned a direct one-on-one coach where you can do unlimited mock interviews. We'll show you how to use the best AI tools on the market to get live feedback on every interview you do so that you learn faster and faster and faster and build those systems to just get way better at interviewing in 1 to 2 weeks rather than 3 to 4 months. And again, make sure you get that next offer way quicker than you would otherwise. So if you want to learn more about that, head to our website, book a call, and we'll see you there.